Resident Evil 2, known in Japan as Biohazard 2, was released on January 21, 1998, for the Sony PlayStation, and 21 years later, Capcom brings us a remake of this classic survival horror game. You may know Capcom as, well, the publisher of all the other Resident Evil games, as well as a slew of other titles. The initial version of the game was scrapped after being almost 2/3 of the way through into development as it was deemed inadequate. This cancelled version is commonly known as Resident Evil 1.5. The finished product provided a more cinematic aspect. Resident Evil 2 takes place in Raccoon City, 2 months after the events of the first game, which occur in the Arklay Mountains outside of town. The T-Virus, a biological weapon developed by the Umbrella Corporation, as introduced in the first game, has since been transmitted to the people of Raccoon City by way of rats. After the events of the first game, the Umbrella Corporation has begun working on a more powerful virus known as the G-Virus, said to turn whoever consumes it into the ultimate bioweapon. You play as one of 2 main characters, Leon Kennedy, the newest officer to join the Raccoon City Police Department, so new in fact, the precinct has yet to hold a welcome party for him, and Claire Redfield, the sister of one of the main characters of the first game, Chris Redfield. Claire has come to Raccoon City looking for her brother, only to find that Chris has gone to Europe to investigate Umbrella's headquarters. After both Leon and Claire meet and are almost crushed by a zombie driving a semi, yes, you heard me right, they are then separated and must find their way to the police station to escape the swarms of zombies outside. Now, while looking for survivors in the supposed safe haven of the police station, it is clear that they are trapped in the building and must find some way to escape the city while learning about the evil Umbrella Corporation through film, letters, and diaries hidden throughout the game. While you play as either Leon or Claire, you are not alone in your endeavor. Depending on which main character you are, there are different side characters to meet and aid you through the game. The only side character exclusively seen by one of the main characters, Leon, is Ada Wong, a mysterious woman, yet a great asset to have alongside Leon. Ada is also playable for a short period of time. And as the game progresses, Leon and Ada develop feelings for each other, though it is not that apparent until near the end, more on that later. Every other character is able to be seen by both main characters, though those encounters may be in different locations, with different dialogue, and even in different states of living. That is, of course, minus the character Hunk, who is a playable character in the minigame The Fourth Survivor, in which Hunk is the sole survivor of a mission before the events of the main game to acquire a sample of the G-Virus and escape the police station alive. A little secret known character in a secret mode of the game, yet loved by those who know about it, is the minigame called the Tofu Survivor. This initially was a test by Capcom of the collision detection in which they used a white box which looks like a piece of tofu with a gun in place of a character you would see in the final version. However, this was in the final version, though not so easily found. In order to play the Tofu Survivor, you must have unlocked the Fourth Survivor, and you have to play through Leon A, then Claire B, a total of 3 times, all with an A ranking. The rank you get at the end of completing the game is dependent on how long it took to complete, how many saves you had, how many first aid sprays you used, and if you used any special weapons. The ranks range from the best being an A to the worst being an E. That being said, to get an A is quite difficult, especially when you have to play through the game a total of 6 times, all with an A rank. You'll have to be quick and use little to no help from items throughout the game. Though that may all seem almost impossible, and you may be asking yourself, would that all be worth it? I don't know. You tell me. Would it be worth it to play as a block of tofu shooting zombies? In the first Resident Evil game, simply titled Resident Evil, there are multiple different outcomes to the game depending on choices you make earlier in the game. Similarly, in Resident Evil 2, there are multiple playthroughs. Each will, for example, trigger enemy encounters, guns, and ammunition in different areas, and even different cutscenes. These different playthroughs are known as Leon A, Leon B, Claire A, and Claire B. Playing through one of the A scenarios will then, once you complete the game, unlock the B scenario for either Leon or Claire, whoever you didn't play as in scenario A. Playing through in the order of Claire A, then Leon B, is considered to be the main narrative of the game. However, each scenario is still considered canon, obviously, because it's in the game. And playing through each scenario will let you experience parts of the game that were not attainable in the other scenarios. In short, in order to see every aspect the game has to offer, you will need to play through the game a total of 4 times, and with the typical length of a game taking approximately 5 hours to complete, playing through each scenario will make the total approximately 20 hours. Compared to games today like Red Dead Redemption 2, that length of time isn't too long. Resident Evil 2 consists of 5 different locations you must traverse, the first of which being the streets of Raccoon City. Both Leon and Claire start their journeys here as they make their way to the police station. The site evilresource.com gives you a blueprint of every room and every level of the game, as well as every other bit of information you might need to get out of a sticky situation you might find yourself in while trying to solve one of the many puzzles in order to advance. I myself am guilty of using the site to help me when I got frustrated and couldn't solve some puzzles on my own. It also gave me insight as to what enemies would appear in certain rooms, the most common enemy being the zombies, which can be seen throughout the entire game, though heavily weighted towards the first half. Next on the scale of most common encounters, you will find what are known as lickers, a further mutated, blind version of the zombie, now with exposed muscles, claws, and a tongue with which to whip you, hence comically named Licker. Other enemies to encounter, just to name a few, include zombie dogs, crows, and what is called a G-type, a fully grown rejected product of a G embryo which is planted in a host by the final boss known as G. Sort of like a xenomorph. And my favorite enemy, and by favorite, I mean least favorite, giant spiders, which poison you. This took a bit of courage to get past, and of course, with this being a horror game, there are a few instances of jump scares. Some of my favorite elements of Resident Evil 2 were, well, first off, the story. I found it to be very believable and engaging, and I was hooked into the mystery which needed to be solved from the very start, and was intrigued to learn how it all played out. The music in the game was truly something special. Not only did it sound great, but it always kept me on my feet with a feeling of tension, not in the way horror movies might deceive you with strings that swell to nothing, but in a way that put you in the shoes of the character you are playing as, so you get a sense of the discomfort they are also experiencing. Overall, it did a great job of shaping the atmosphere. After looking at the first game and hearing the voice acting, I wasn't too impressed.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
With Resident Evil 2, however, though it was not as good as we might see today, or as good as the remake is, it was still an improvement on the first game. At times, it was hard to decipher emotions some characters were trying to convey based on the voice acting. For example, I wasn't picking up the love interest between Leon and Ada until it became blatantly obvious with music to accompany the scene. In other scenes, the graphics of the PlayStation and the movements of characters coupled with the dialogue made for a bit of comedic timing. Hold on, is that a JoJo reference? The controls took a bit to get used to, with the original PlayStation controllers lacking the joysticks, which come standard on every later generation. I found myself running into walls often, and having to turn before continuing moving forward. After spending many hours playing with this setup, I was able to get the hang of it, and when I started up the game again to play as Claire, I was practically an expert with the controls. The graphics of the game seemed to be alright, seeing as the game is from 1998, and when looked at side by side with what many consider to be the best PlayStation 1 game, Metal Gear Solid, it's easy to realize there is nothing to complain about here. Though many reviews of the game point out such things I already mentioned, like the voice acting as a negative and the inventory system as nothing to praise, I, on the contrary, thought the inventory system was a pretty neat way of going about it. But don't let these negative points fool you. Resident Evil 2 has been widely regarded as a fantastic game. It can even be found on many lists of greatest video games of all time, including a book titled 1001 Video Games You Must Play Before You Die, which lists games from 1971's The Oregon Trail to 2013's BioShock Infinite. It has also been regarded as one of the best games in the Resident Evil franchise. Many reviews for Resident Evil 2 give it praise by saying things such as, a really important entry in the series, and Resident Evil 2 surpasses its predecessor in nearly every aspect of gameplay, and in short, Capcom has outdone itself. Critic reviews of Resident Evil 2 gave it an average rating somewhere around 94 out of 100, with the lowest around 87 and the highest being 100. For me, I'd say about right in the middle of those, 9.5. I do highly recommend it. Overall, I thought it was a fantastic game, and though this was my first experience playing a Resident Evil game, it certainly won't be my last.